In modern and postmodern poetry, I have often mentioned a poet whose name is E. Cummings. By the way, he preferred to write his names with uh, small letters or in lowercase. That's why his name has been written in this way. He is a writer who makes experimentation with form of graph. Graph means how poetry is written on paper. And he believes that freedom was not easy, especially freedom in poetry. So his poetry is free verse, but according to him, free verse is not easy. As for expressing nobody but yourself in words, that means working just a little harder than anybody who isn't a poet. His aim was to create a unique and where necessary eccentric voice to express his unique and sometimes eccentric personality. तो कमिंग्स की पोइट्री का मकसद जो है एक खपती किस्म की रवैये को प्रेजेंट करना था, दैट इज एक्सेंट्रिक बिहेवियर presented in eccentric poetry. He armed himself with a whole battery of technical effects. Technical effects mean free words are on occasion a highly original development of traditional forms. Irregular typography. Irregular typography means some lines are shorter, others are longer, spellings are varied, and even diagonal writing is sometimes managed and from right to left and left to right. That type of irregular typography is there. Startling imagery. Imagery that is unusual. Word coinage mean new words are coined. Syntactical or grammatical distortion. Syntactical mean at sentence level, and grammatical distortions are made by that experimentalist poet E. Cummings. E. Cummings chooses rough and little children for his heroes, outsiders who have achieved absolute selfhood. Among the roughs is Buffalo Bill, a typically Western hero associated with careless energy of the frontier. So he was a handsome man in Buffalo Bill's Defunct. That's a line of his poem. So Buffalo Bill is, you can say, typical cowboy who emerges as a hero in Cummings' poetry. Gertrude Stein. Gertrude Stein is thought the mother of American literature. She is the most important writer. If you read Ernest Hemingway, and he's the writer of that, Ernest Hemingway is the writer of The Lost Generation. Gertrude Stein is a writer who coined the phrase the lost generation. She is expressionist, she is symbolist, she is impressionist writer of the time. Nouns for her masterpieces in American literature, we can say her stature can be compared with English writer Charles Dickens. She wrote such books like The Lectures in America or The Making of Americans. Her first published work is Three Lives. These are stories of the good Anna, Melansta, and gentle Lena. That is thought a naturalist work. Another work is Tender Buttons. She wrote more than 500 titles. That includes novels, poems, plays, articles, memoirs, and portraits of the famous writers. So the writer who has written 500 titles, you can imagine her worth. She wrote the Geographical History of America. She wrote Ida, that's a novel. The autobiography of Alice B. That is thought fictionalized biography of Gertrude Stein herself. She was one of the lost generation writers who migrated along with Hemingway. Of all American writers concerned with the inventions of modernism, Scott Fitzgerald was the most autobiographical writer, finding in the compulsions of his life the contours of his fiction. He sustained for his generation the great American romance of the self. Great American romance of the self, that's American identity, American self, that is a topic that was discussed earlier in 19th century poetry and prose, and later on in 20th century, its complexity was shown. One of the American ideal is the American dream. American dream is a topic that is seen in many American texts, including Scott Fitzgerald novel, The Great Gatsby, Tender is the Night, and dramas of Arthur Miller like Death of a Salesman, drama of Edward Albee, which title is The American Dream, dramas of David Mamet, which title is The American Buffalo, and American Buffalo in that place stands for the American Dream. अमेरिकन लिटरेचर का एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट कॉन्सेप्ट जो है वो अमेरिकन ड्रीम है. अमेरिकन ड्रीम का मतलब ये है कि वो ड्रीम जो अमेरिकन फोर फादर्स ने अमेरिकन नेशन को दिया था. वो ड्रीम क्या था? वो ड्रीम ये था कि अमेरिका इज द लैंड ऑफ लिबर्टी. अमेरिका इज ओपन फॉर एवरीवन. Anyone from any parts of the world can reach America and try his luck. One can try his luck having a faith in honesty, liberty, and hard work. यानी ये ड्रीम ये था कि अमेरिका में सबके लिए आजादी और मुसावात है. इसलिए अगर आप ईमानदारी से काम करते हैं और आप जान लड़ाते हैं, मेहनत करते हैं, तो आपको क्या मिलेगा? उस मेहनत का सिला यानी कि कामयाबी जरूर मिलेगी। ये एक पॉलिटिकल स्लोगन था that was presented by Benjamin Franklin but popularized by Thomas Jefferson, former president of America. And that slogan is translated into American literature through different wonders. American literature is mostly the literature of adventure and exploration. And it is a literature of adventure and exploration because the characters of that literature, they are trying their luck. They are trying to be successful. But they cannot understand the complexities of that dream, and that dream in a distorted form, in corrupt form, is a target of 20th century literature. I mean, plays of Arthur Miller, plays of Edward Albee, plays of David Mamet, and the novel of Scott Fitzgerald. Protagonists of Scott Fitzgerald novels like This Side of Paradise, The Great Gatsby, Tender is the Night, and The Last Icon bear an extraordinary resemblance to their creator, writer himself, I mean Scott Fitzgerald. Scott Fitzgerald entered the army in 1917, and it was while stationed in Alabama state of America, where he met Zelda Sire, an aspiring writer like him and a woman renowned for her daring, gaiety, and beauty. And he himself recorded, I fell in love with Harmin Zelda Sire on September 7th. They were eventually married in 1920, the year his first collection of stories, Flappers and Philosophers, and his first novel, The Side of Paradise, were published. In American literature, the decade of 1930s is called the Jazz Age. Jazz is actually the refined form, or you can say popular form of blues. Blues and jazz are actually the music of the African American, and that is thought the best cultural contribution of the African Americans in the American culture. And Scott Fitzgerald once said, I wanted to be the historian of the jazz generation. So we can say in his work, 1930s, 1920s, they are properly documented. In his best work, The Great Gatsby, narrator is Nick Carraway. Carraway is a character as well as narrator of this novel, and protagonist of the novel is J. Gatsby, who actually is fascinated with the idea of success and American dream, and he succeeds materially, but he loses a lot spiritually. Both Nick Carraway and Jay Gatsby have a love affair with a charismatic woman that ends in illusion. Gatsby with Daisy Buchanan, that's the female protagonist of the novel, and it is believed her character is modeled on Zelda Sire, another writer whom Scott Fitzgerald married. Nick Carraway uh, falls in love with Jordan Baker, another character of the novel. She's a golf player. The use of Nick Carraway as narrator enables Scott Fitzgerald to maintain a balance for the first time in his career between the two sides of his character. The idealist, the romantic who believed in possibility and perfectibility, and the pragmatist, the realist that convinced that life is circumscribed, nasty, brutish, and short. So one is represented through Gatsby, another is represented through Nick Carraway. I think in American fiction, the most important fiction writer is Ernest Hemingway. Some people believe that there are only two great American writers. One is Eugene O'Neill and other is Ernest Hemingway. And they don't value the rest of the American literature. I don't believe in it, but I can actually understand that these two have central position in whole of American literature. Ernest Hemingway, who is known for his precise, colloquial, masculine American idiom, who is introduced as the novelist of the lost generation. Lost generation mean the writers and the peoples who joined the First World War with an ideal, and at the end of the war, they had lost their ideals. They had lost their faith in any idealism. That is seen in novels of Hemingway, either it's The Sun Also Rises or Farewell to Arms or Far Home the Bell Tolls. Second, Hemingway is known for his idea that is called despairing courage. Despairing courage is shown in desperate movement. यानी एक ऐसा लम्हा जब आर या पार की सिचुएशन होती है और उस वक्त इंसान जो जुर्रत या बहादुरी दिखाता है, that is called despairing courage, and that despairing courage is heroic trait of Hemingway's heroes. I mean, whether it's the Henry in Farewell to Arms or Robert Jordan in the novel Far Home the Bell Tolls. Another idea that is seen in Hemingway's novel that is called nada or nothingness. In the face of palpable nothing, meaninglessness, there are finally only the imperatives of conduct and communion with one's own solitariness. Jake, in Hemingway's novel The Sun Also Rises, says, I did not care what it was all about. All I wanted to know was how to live in it. One way to live in it has a political stand. To have and have not is an emphatic protest against corruption, political hypocrisy, and immortality of gross inequality. Far Home the Bell Tolls commemorates 3 days of a guerrilla action in the Spanish Civil War. Spanish Civil War was fought between the nationalists under the leadership of General Franco and the liberal government of the time in Spain, and celebrates the Republican fight against fascism. Republican was actually the liberal government of the time, which had a dominant party of Socialist Party that was supported by Russia as well. And General Franco, he was an example of fascism. So nationalists were fascists. So Hemingway, the hero, Robert Jordan, who is an American instructor, he joins that war for the sake of an ideal. That ideal is of liberty. Though when he reaches there and practically sees there are, you can say, the Russians who are not for the sake of liberty, but for the sake of communist ideals are supporting that war. Even the general in whose command Robert Jordan has to perform a guerrilla action, he is anti-liberty. When he joins that action and he has to blow a bridge, there is the character of Pablo, and Pablo is a guerrilla war soldier of Spain who joined the war with a passion, but later on he became corrupt, he became deteriorated, vindictive, and though he joined the war as a protest against the brutal killing of the people of his village, but with the passage of time, his commercial interest has superseded his motivation for war. On the other side, Jordan, who is more energetic and idealist, and he thinks that he has joined the war for a cause. Practically, he sees that there is no such cause as a just war or war for the sake of liberal government or for the sake of liberty, and just mentally deteriorated Robert Jordan is dragged to show despairing courage in his dying moment by blowing the bridge. Ernest Hemingway participated in First World War as ambulance driver. He was wounded in the war because life was war, nasty, brutal, and arbitrary, and that is a lesson Nick has now learned in the novel In Our Time? Often thought Hemingway's best novel is A Farewell to Arms. Hemingway's art is called art of precision. Here we are reading, Hemingway called this verbal art the art of omission. यानी लफ्जों को, बेकार लफ्जों को जो है वो निकाल देना, एडिट करना. We can see his great work, The Old Man and the Sea. That's the best example of precise novel. You could omit anything if you knew that you omitted. Hemingway learned from First World War that war not just a distrust but a hatred of abstraction. The high-sounding generalization used an excuse or justification for mass slaughter. Mean ये जो वार के लिए स्लोगन्स हैं ये खोखले होते हैं, ये जैसे लफ्जों में लगते हैं हकीकत में उससे मुख्तलिफ है. ये सब मैस स्लॉटर, कत्ले आम के लिए यूज किए जाते. वतन से मोहब्बत, हुब्बुल वतनी, पेट्रियाटिज्म, ये सारे जो बातें हैं ये किस तरह से वार की जस्टिफिकेशन के लिए और वार में इंसानों के कत्ल के लिए यूज किए जाते. I was always embarrassed by the words sacred, मुकद्दस काम, glorious, अजीमुशान, and sacrifice, and the expression in vain, says the protagonist Frederick Henry of Farewell to Arms. So Henry ने जो कहा है, I was always embarrassed by the words sacred, words glorious, and sacrifice, and the expression in vain. The things that were glorious had no glory, and the stockyard were like the stockyards of Chicago. Hemingway came to feel that abstract words such as glory, honor, courage, or hollow are obscene words. The simple words, those that carried the smallest burden of stock attitudes, were the safest ones. What Hemingway is caught in perhaps his most successful novel, The Sun Also Rises. The seminal treatment of the lost generation, I mean, its characters, they are a representation of the lost generation that has lost their faith in idealism and pre-First World War virtues, values, and faith. The Sun Also Rises describes a few weeks of spring in Paris, France, during which we watch the hero Jake Barnes, who is living in customary life. Jack Barney goes on a fishing trip in Spain and attends a fiesta in Pamplona. Running through this small slice of his life is a minimal plot that is concerned with the relationship between Jake and English woman, Brett Ashley. Brett is the woman with whom Jake has been in love, off and on, for some time, though he is not so sure whether he loves her or not. But when the novel ends, Jake and Brett Ashley are exactly where they were at the start. The novel ends where it began. The characters walk around in a circle, not getting anywhere but just surviving. We can see that Sun Also Rises presents the similar dilemma that was seen in The Wasteland of T.S. Eliot. This is a world full of people with nothing to do and no place apparently to go. We can hear Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, that is echoing, mean nothing to do and nowhere to go. The characters typically are situated in another country, an alien place, and they seem cut off from all sense of purpose. They are cut off from communal identity or historical direction. Their common situation is miserable. These characters live under constant stress, the pressure of living in a world without meaning, and their challenge is to show grace under that pressure. First question the character asks is he or she one of us? Mean estrangement is felt. Some characters behave well, like Jake. Some behave badly, like Brett Ashley. Some never get the opportunity to behave well or badly because, like the least attractive character in the book, Robert Cohn, they never see what life is really like or know what they truly feel. For Hemingway, life had no meaning independent of immediate experience. So symbolism was impossible for him. Life had no meaning independent of immediate experience. That is the thing which is expressed in his theory of nada, or uh, you can say there is nothing beyond this world or beyond this moment. It is a fact, an instance of the cruel tricks life plays and the pressures everyone must confront. For Jake and Brett, his character, love seeks its natural expression and issue in sex sensory fulfillment. But this is impossible for these characters. The end of the novel shows that despite the temptation to pity to himself, to dream of what might have been, to indulge in fantasy, Jake Bernice can see and stand things as they really are. He can be straight and pure and natural in his response to even the worst his life has to offer. Brett Ashley invites him to indulge, to escape from truth into daydream. Oh, Jake, we could have had such a damned good time together. But his reply is simple. Yes, isn't it pretty to think so? Jake is a wounded and exiled in a world without pity, but so are all men and women. Hemingway intimates. Jake is a hero just as we are all if we have the courage to face things and ourselves. So Ernest Hemingway, he is a realist fiction writer. He is a writer of the lost generation. He is a fiction writer known for the art of precision. He presents accurate expression of human experience. He was very much fond of uh, truth that can be expressed through language. And for that purpose, he served as a truck driver, taxi driver, waiter, fisherman, peasant. Um, Many roles actually he performed. And in his later life, we see him in cafes in Paris. Twice he went into exile, first in Paris and second Madrid, that's a city of Spain. His novel, The Old Man and the Sea, that is about struggle of a fisherman Santiago, that captures the you can say last day of unsuccessful adventure of Santiago, mean 84 days when Santiago fails to catch a single fish, and the other fishermen begin to call him slow or unlucky. Santiago, who believes to be exact than lucky, exact, exact mean expert, and in his old age, he has not given up to have dreams. He still has a faith that 85 is his lucky number and he will go and catch a fish. On the 85th day, he goes and hooks the big marlin. Marlin drags his skiff or boat, small boat, and he lets the marlin do it by letting his line or string. The first day